cultivate all the good things come to me from above. If I would count all the blessings from the storehouse of love, I simply ask for the favor of Him beyond mortal king, and I'm sure He grant it again and again. I want to stroll over heaven with you. Psalms 76. In Judah is God known, His name is great in Israel. In Salem also His tabernacle and His dwelling place in Zion. There brake He the arrows of the bow, the shield and the sword in the battle, Selah. Thou art more glorious and excellent than the mountains of prey. The stout-hearted are spoiled, they have slept their sleep, and none of the men of might have found their hands. At thy rebuke, O God of Jacob, both the chariot and horse are cast into a deep sleep. Thou, even thou, art to be feared, and who may stand in thy sight when once thou art an angel? Thou didst call judgment to be heard from heaven. The earth feared and was still. When God arose to judgment to save all the meek of the earth, Selah. Surely the wrath of man shall praise thee, the remembering of the wrath shall thou restrain. Vow and pay unto the Lord thy God. Let all that be round about thee bring presents unto him that ought to be feared. He shall cut off the spirit of princes. He is terrible to the king. He is terrible to the kings of the earth. 77. I cried unto God with my voice, even unto God with my voice, and He gave ear unto me. In the day of my trouble I sought the Lord. My sore ran in the night, and ceased not. My soul refused to be comforted. I remembered God and was troubled. I complained, and my spirit was overwhelmed. Selah. Thou holdest mine eyes while walking. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I have considered the days of old, the years of ancient times. I call to remembrance my song in the night. I commune with mine own heart, and my spirit made diligent search. Will the Lord cast off forever, and will He be favorable no more? Is His mercy clean gone forever? Does His promise fail forevermore? Hath God forgotten to be gracious? Hath He in anger shut up His tender mercies? Selah. And I said, This is my infirmity, but I will remember the years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the works of the Lord. Surely I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also of all thy work, and talk to all thy doings. Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? Thou art the God that doest wonders, that hast declared the strength among the people. Thou hast with thine arm redeemed thy people, the sons of Jacob and Joseph. Selah. The waters saw thee, O God, the waters saw thee. Thou were afraid, the depths also were troubled. The clouds poured out water, the sky sent out a sound. Thine arrows also were abroad. The voice of thy thunder was in the heaven. The lightnings lighted the world. The earth trembled and shook. Thy way is in the sea, and thy path is in the great waters, and thy footsteps are not known. Thou leadest thy people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. 78. Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. We will not hide them from their children, showing to the generation to come to the praises of the Lord and His works that He hath done. For He established a testament in Jacob, and appointed a law in Israel, which He commanded our fathers, that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even to the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to the children, that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of the God, but keep his commandments. And might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation that set not their heart aright, and whose spirit was not steadfast with God. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back to the day of the battle. They kept not the covering of God and refused it to walk in his law, and forgat his works and his wonders that he showed them. Marvelous things did he in the sight of his fathers, in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zon. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand as a heap. In the daytime also he led them in a cloud, and all the night with the light of the fire. He clave the rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink out of it with great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock, and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. And they tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lusts. Yea, they spake against God and said, Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote the rock, and the waters gushed out, and the streams overflowed. Yet he gave bread also. Can he provide flesh for his people? Therefore the Lord heard thus, and was wroth. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel, because they believed not in God, and trusted not in his salvation, though he had commanded out of the clouds from above, and opened the doors of heaven, and had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them the corn of heaven. Man did not eat angels' food, he sent them meat to be full. He caused an east wind to blow in the heaven, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He rained flesh also upon them as dust, and feathered fowls like as the sand of the sea. And he let it fall in the midst of the camp, round about their habitations. So they did eat, and were filled, and he gave them their own desire. They were not enstrangled from their lusts, but while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of God came upon them, and slew the fattest of them, and smote down the chosen of them, chosen man of Israel. For all this they sinned still, and believed not for his wondrous works. Therefore their days did he consume in vanity, and their years in trouble. When he slew them, then they sought him, and they were returning, inquired early after God. And they remembered that God was their rock, and the high God their Redeemer. Nevertheless, they did flatter him with their mouth, and they lied unto him with their tongues. For their heart was not right with him, neither were they steadfast in his covenant. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity, and destroyed them not. Yea, many a time turned he his anger away, and did not stir it up his wrath. For he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passeth away and cometh not again. How oft did they provoke him in the wilderness, and grieve him in the desert? Yea, they turned and tempted God, and limited the Holy One of Israel. They remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt, and wonders in the field of Zon, and had turned their rivers into blood, and their floods that they could not drink. He sent divers sorts of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs which destroyed them. He gave them also increase unto caterpillar, and their labor unto locusts. He destroyed their vines with hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. He gave up their cattle also to the hail, and their flocks to hot thunderbolts. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation, and trouble by sending evil angels among them. He made a way to his angels. He spared not their own soul from death, but gave their life over to pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of their strength, in the tabernacles of Ham. But made his own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. And he led them on safely, so that they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. And he brought them to the border of his sanctuary, given to this mountain which his right hand had purchased. He cast out the heathen also before him, and divided them into the inheritance of land, and made the tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents. Yet they tempted and provoked the Most High God, and kept not his testimonies, but turned back and dealt unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places, and moved him to jealousy with their graven images. When God heard this, he was wroth and greatly abhorred Israel. So he forsook the tabernacle of Sheol, the tent which he had placed among man, and delivered his strength into captivity, his glory into his enemy's hand. He gave his people over also to the sword, and was wroth of his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given to marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then the Lord awaked as one out of the sleep, and like a mighty man that showeth by reason of wine. And he smote his enemies in the hinder parts. He put them to perpetual reproach. Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high places, like the earth which he had established forever. He chose David also his servant, and took him from the sheepfold. From following the ewes grape from the young he brought him, to feed Jacob his people, and Israel his inheritance. So he led them according to he guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. 79. O God, the heathen are coming to thine inheritance, thy holy temple have they defiled. They have laid Jerusalem on heaps. The dead bodies of the servants have they given it to be meat unto the fowls of the heaven. The flesh of the fowls of the heaven, the flesh of the saints unto the beasts of the earth. Their blood have they shed like a water about Jerusalem. And there was none to bury them. We are become a reproach to our neighbors, a scorn and derision to them that are round about us. How long, Lord, wilt thou be angry forever? Shall thou be jealousy burn like fire? Pour out thy wrath upon the heathen that have not known thee, and upon the kingdoms that have not called upon thy name. For they have devoured Jacob, and laid waste his dwelling place. O remember not against us former iniquities. Let thy tender mercy speedily prevent us, for we are brought very low. Help us, O God of our salvation, for the glory of thy name, and deliver us, and purge away our sins, for thy name's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, where is their God? Let them be known among the heathen, and sight by revenging his blood of thy servants which is shed. Let the sighing of the prisoner come before thee, according to the greatness of thy power. Preserve thou that have appointed to die, and render unto our neighbors sevenfold into our bosom thy reproach, wherefore they have reproached thee, O Lord. So we, thy people, and the sheep of thy pasture, will give thee thanks forever. We will show forth thy praise to all generations. And that concludes our reading tonight. Thank you.
Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know who holds the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. And then one day I'll cross that river, I'll find life's find, no more pain. And then as death gives way